Alexa, volume up. Alexa, next song. Alexa, play Anita Baker. Something different. I'm trying to get Alexa to play something different, y'all.
Amazon Music Unlimited free trial on this Echo. It's free for 30 days and then $2.99 a month until you cancel. Comes in the Alexa app. Should I sign you up and play music by Anita Baker?
No.
Okay. I can play similar music instead for free.
Appreciate it.
Here's a station for you based on Anita Baker on Amazon Music.
Hello, hello. Hello, hello. How are y'all doing? Hello, hello. Let me know who's here. Okay. Hello. Let me know who's here. Hello, how y'all doing on this Wednesday evening? Thank y'all for joining me again this week. I'm going to give a few more people time to come on and we're going to get started. With Dealing with Fear Part 2. Got some requests from last week to carry it on. So we're going to do Part 2. Are you all having a good hump day? Wonderful Wednesday, Wisdom Wednesday. I'm going to give it a few more minutes, then we're going to get started, y'all. Hey, girl, hey. You going to come on and be my guest today? I'm trying to figure out how to look at the camera. I look up here, but I can't see what I'm reading. So that's why I look like I'm looking away from the camera. The camera is at the top of my computer. How are y'all doing this evening? Let me know who else is here. Hello, how y'all doing? Oh, can y'all hear me? Let me put my microphone in front of me. Get in trouble all the time about this microphone. Get it right. There we go. All right. Should be good to go. Jasmine, can y'all hear me okay? Am I loud enough? Don't sound muffly? Okay, cool. Where my grandbabies at? Y'all, we're gonna get started in about 2 minutes. Hey, Lynn, you know you got an open invite. Great. We're gonna get started in about 2 minutes, y'all. We're gonna be dealing with fear part 2. I received some great reviews or great responses, should I say, last week, and they were really good. So prayed about it and decided to continue with the fear part 2. As I didn't realize, well, I knew people were dealing with fear, but I didn't realize the depth of the fear that we're all dealing with and facing with at some point in time in our life. So we're going to be dealing with fear part 2 tonight. Oh, hey, Gigi babies. I love y'all. Tell them I'll call them, Jasmine. I'll FaceTime them after this. So let them stay up. Well, how's everybody on this wonderful Wednesday? Wisdom Wednesday. Alexa, volume down. Yes, let them stay up so I can FaceTime them when I get done. Gigi's orders. So we are going to get started. I want to thank you all for tuning in to another weekly broadcast of PC Ministries, where we deal with what you feel from the inside out. We are going to be dealing with fear again this week, part 2. And I want to start off by saying the reason I chose to deal with fear is based out of my broadcast with Lynn Mizell, when we were talking about pursuing your passion. And one of the topics under her broadcast was from going from fear. So that stuck out to me because I, for one, have deal with fear, operate out of a state of fear in a lot of areas. So I thought that was something that I could speak on from passion, not from just reading notes or studying or something like that. That's from passion. So that's why we are talking about dealing with fear. And also last week we talked about fear. And we talked about fear as being false evidence appearing real. We know fear is, from scare tactics, fear of harm, and things like that. But we're not talking about that type of fear. We're talking about the fear that keeps you from progressing, keeps you from pursuing your goals, pursuing your passion, keeps you from doing the things that God has called you to do, or just the things that are in your heart to do. We're talking about that fear, the fear that paralyzes you to where you don't move forward, you don't do anything. That's the fear that we're talking about, the fear of false evidence appearing real. And last week we talked about what fear was, and we explained that fear was an unpleasant emotion caused by a belief, an anticipation, or an expectation of someone or something, which is likely produced by a perception. We also talked about how fear produces freeze responses. So when you put in that place of fear, you fall under like a freezing behavior, causing you to stay completely still. And we related it to where I was studying. I saw that they said that when prey animals, when they're caught, they become completely still in hopes of not being detected. So we talked about the freeze responses last week. We also talked about how fear paralyzes us, which causes us to have a loss of ability to move or feel anything, and gives us an inability to act or function properly, which forces us in a state of powerlessness or incapacity. We also talked about how we acquire fear. The definition of acquire was learned or developed, or something that we own into or we buy into, like we acquire, we get and we make as our own. So we talked about how fear is learned or could be developed, and how we buy into our fear and accept it as our own. So with all of that being said, tonight we're going to move into, the actual fear, like what triggers our fear. And I want you to ask yourself that question: what triggers my fear? Sometimes our fears get triggered when we are placed in a position to do something, or a position to be something, or a position where we are exposed, or a position to where we can be criticized. So ask yourself, what triggers my fear? I don't know what your fears are. I know for myself, I had a fear of being criticized. I would always expect negativity from people. Like I discussed last week, I don't mind being transparent. I've always expected someone to say something negative about everything I did, because as a child, I was criticized a lot. Not to say that's the only reason I have the fear, but it definitely played a major part into this type of fear that I operate on. And a lot of times I've found out in my older age that people ain't thinking about you. You're thinking, for me, I was thinking people are thinking this and they're looking at me this way, or they're, whatever. And people ain't thinking about me. I'm so far from their mind, but in my mind, this is, what I'm conjuring up. This is what I'm operating from, because of that fear. And that fear stops you. Like I said last week, I have the backup spirit. I'll just stop doing it and just disappear. And I'm okay with that. I say I'm okay with that, but I'm not okay with that, because now I'm watering myself down. I'm not being effective. I'm not walking worthy of the call of God on my life, because I am allowing myself to operate from this foundation of fear. And like God said, He has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, like my shirt says, power, love, and a sound mind. And we have to figure out ways to overcome these fears. And these fears are really false evidence appearing real that we have made real. So what triggers your fear? What has triggered your fear? If you have overcome your fear, or you have some way, please ask to join so I can bring you on and you can share these tips, because we're in this together. I don't have all the answers. I'm not coming to you because I done got it all together. I have no more fears. I'm just starting a dialogue, something for us to talk about and discuss, and something that you can take back with you and begin to tear down these strongholds of fear and this bondage that fear has placed around you and on you. So what triggers your fear? Ask yourself that question. Does the insecurity trigger your fear? And please put your questions and your comments in the comment section so I can address them and we can talk about them. Does your insecurity trigger your fear? Does your insecurity make things appear out of nowhere that you think is there? Again, false evidence appearing real. Let me ask you this, does not having answers trigger your fear of the unknown? So if you're put into a position or where you have to have an answer and you don't have the answer, does that trigger a fear response in you? A freeze response, so where you don't freeze, you don't do anything. Do you run? Do you avoid? What triggers your fear? That's what we're talking about right now. What triggers your fear? What about the lack of unknown? A lot of times that can trigger fear because you don't know where you're going or what you're doing or what to expect. So that can trigger your unknown. But within that fear of the unknown, what is the basis of the fear of the unknown? Is it your lack of preparedness or preparedness? Or is there a lack of confidence in your ability to perform the task at hand, whatever it may be? Again, I'm just asking. Yes, Lynn, exactly. Too many variables of the outcome. Yeah, a lot. And a lot of times that will cause us to freeze because we don't know what to expect at all, and a lot of times, like I just said, the fear of our unknown, the fear of those variables, we could be our lack of preparedness. We're not confident in being able to rise to an occasion or being able to perform the task at hand. So it causes a fear, or it triggers a fear in us that causes us to act out or not act out, to leave, to freeze, as to not be detected, or whatever. So we have to ask ourselves, whatever fear you're operating under, what is triggering that fear? Someone said last week that she had a fear of being criticized. So can you imagine, for those of us that are in management, leadership, ministry, what have you, parents, whatever, what if you had that fear of being criticized? How do you avoid being criticized? We cannot control people, places, or things. People are going to say and do what they want to say and do. So with that being said, imagine operating under a fear of being criticized. You will never do anything. You will never be able to do anything. So what do we do about that? Do we just continue not doing anything or continue on in this fear? Or do we do something about it? Yes. Do we do something about it? Do we tackle this fear? Because again, we're talking about the fear that is false evidence appearing real. And sometimes, and I'll throw a twist to that, false evidence appearing real. Sometimes the evidence is real. Sometimes you are being criticized. Sometimes you are being talked about. Sometimes you are being judged or stuff like that, that's causing the triggering your fear. But at the same time, if you know this is something that you're supposed to be doing, that's where you're supposed to be, and it is it is what it is. You still have to continue. You still have to continue. You cannot give everybody that much power over your actions. You can't give people that much power over what you say and do. That's giving up your control. And we can't give that to everyone. We cannot do that because everyone does not have our best interests at heart. People are mean, people are cruel, people are hateful, and it is what it is. And we cannot run our life or conduct our life and our things according to people, according to man. Exactly. And being compared, we do have to press on anyway, Lynn. You're absolutely right. And sometimes that's hard to do because, again, we're looking for acceptance. We're looking for approval. We're looking for validation, that atta girl, or I see you, girl, or, the confirmation of something. And sometimes we don't get that. And I know for me, I was looking for approval for a lot of people that I looked up to. And when I wasn't getting it, I was like, well, what's wrong with me? Am I not supposed to be doing this? Or am I out of timing or whatever? And like I said, sometimes God won't allow people to do that because he wants to be the one that approves us. He wants us to look to him. And again, our processes are different. That may be my process. God may put people, and I have had people in my life that have affirmed me and have, given me that support and stuff like that. And then I've had people that have not, and like I said last week, sometimes we're looking to certain people for that affirmation and for that approval, for that validation, and it's not for them to give. So we have to watch our unfair expectations that we place on people to validate us, to affirm us, because it's not their place. Okay, so we have to, I am so sorry, y'all. So sorry. Let me turn this down. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. I'm in my office. So we have to understand that that we cannot allow ourselves to operate from behind the fear of what people say and think about us. We cannot. And if we're doing that, it is time. It's time. It is time. You are affirmed. God approves you. And God said who he has called, he has equipped. So if God has called you to do a certain thing, and he's called you to be something or go somewhere, then you have his approval. And like I said last week, it's hard sometimes to have faith and trust and have that approval from something, from a God who we can't see or we can't feel, because we want that tangible affirmation. But if we're not getting it from each other, where are you going to get it from? Are you going to continue to just not feel validated, or are you going to look to God? Or you're going to look to him who made you, who created you and formed you in your mother's womb from the beginning? So he knows your path. He knows what he has for you. He knows what you're going to think, feel, say, do, respond to. He knows your fears. So sometimes we have to remove our reach. We're reaching for people, places, and things to comfort us, to validate us, to affirm us. And that's not who we're supposed to be reaching for. We're supposed to be reaching for God. So some of us, our process is God has removed those areas that can validate us, or those people who we look to besides God to validate us, because he wants to be the one to lead us and guide us and affirm us and validate us. So let's turn our affection and turn our will and our yearning back to God, who can validate us, because can't nobody do you like God. Not no husband, not no child, no children, no friend, no girlfriend, no position, no weed, no drink, no sex, none of that. Can't none of that do what God can do for you. So we're turning to those things. I know I just went a whole nother lane, but I'm gonna come on back to dealing with fear. Nothing can do you like God can. So if you're looking to people, places, or things to validate you or affirm you, or just love on you, you have to look to God, because that's who wants to do that. Exactly, Zetra. We all deal with that validation. And it is daily seeking God, so you don't have to feel the need to receive validation from others. Yes, and it's hard to seek a God who you can't see, because we naturally want that tangible love. We want that validation from our sister, or from that person that we look up to, or from that pastor, or from that co-worker, or from that husband, that spouse, that child. And although we should get those things, and we may get those things, the ultimate love is going to be from Christ, because he's our maker. So again, I ask you, what triggers your fear? What triggers your fear? Sometimes the lack of support or appreciation, you feel alone, that will trigger a fear. Sometimes when you have, what about a lack or a loss of control? Do we have any people that have to be in control here? What happens when you lose that control? What happens when you are no longer in control of what it is you think you need to be in control of, or you lose control of that? What fear does that trigger? Some people are dealing with health scares. Can you imagine that fear? Because now it's out of your control, and now you lose control of being healthy, you lose control of being fit and all of that, and it's placed in the hands of doctors and what they say and pills and all of this stuff. Imagine that fear. So let me ask you this. When you have that loss of control, or just say you've been fired from a job, or you now have a health issue that you're dealing with, or you're now divorced, or whatever the fear is that's out of your control, what do you do from that point? Does the reason behind your fear, is it reason enough for you to stop what you're supposed to be doing? Is it justifiable enough for you to no longer do what God has called you to do because of a health scare, or because of a loss of a job, a loss of a spouse, or what have you? Is it reason enough for you to stop? I don't know. It's hard. But a lot of times, and I'm not saying that health scares are not scary. I'm not saying that loss of jobs are not scary, loss of a spouse. I'm not saying any of that is not scary, and you're justified in your feelings if you're dealing with any of that. I'm just saying, are those things justifiable enough for us to stop doing what we know we're supposed to be doing, i.e., ministering, mentoring, therapy, whatever it is that we're doing, and we reach others and we impact the lives of others. Are those things big enough or justifiable enough for us to stop? I don't think so. If we still have life, health, and strength in our body, and we can continue to do what God has called us to do, and fight through the fear, or fight through the pain of what we're going through, we can continue to do what God has called us to do. I'm a witness. I'm a witness. Like Lynn said in the comments, we have to press on anyhow. And a lot of times that press is hard. That press is hard. Think of ironing. You're ironing wrinkles out, but that iron has to take some heat, and you have to steam, and you have to press it down on your clothes to iron the wrinkles out. That's hot. That's heavy. That's hard. It's hard. So sometimes that press is hard. Zetra, if you want to come on, girl, come on and make your statements. I see you in these comments. So that press is hard to do sometimes when you've been faced with some things that have shaken your faith or triggered your fears beyond imaginable, if that's the right word to say right there. I'm not sure. But sometimes, we are, like we talked about last week, acquiring a fear. Sometimes we have had things in our life that have forced us into like a fear because of life experiences. And we have to be careful that we don't operate from that fearful place in going forward, because there are going to be triggers. You cannot control your triggers, but what you can control is how you respond to your triggers. So what do you do when you're triggered? What do you do? Hey, niece, what do you do when you're triggered? Do you back up? I do. Do you flee? Do you just like leave it alone and go around it, stay away from it, stay far away from it as possible? Do you have that freeze response, the way you just freeze, don't move, don't do nothing, and then to hope that you don't get detected? Is that what you do? Or do you become invisible? I used to decrease myself, get real small. Do we become invisible? We're talking about what you do when you trigger. Think about when you're triggered. Think about it. What do you do? Like, what is your response to being triggered? Do you get busy so you don't think about it or deal with it? But you got to think about what your trigger is. Like, what is your trigger? And think about when you're triggered, what is it that you do? What is it? What is it? Because if we don't know what it is, what our triggers are, and if we don't know what it is we do, we're not going to be able to overcome or deal with our fear. And again, fear is temporary, but regrets last forever. So you want to deal with your fear. You don't want to just allow your fear, because when we run away from it, or we don't address it, or we decrease ourselves, or we avoid it or get busy, it's going to continue to come back. Yeah, I do too. Sometimes I distract it. I just don't want to do it. I just turn it off and keep on moving elsewhere. And that's not always healthy, because it's going to continue to come around. Y'all know I like definitions, right? So since we're talking about what triggers your fear, look at the definition of the word trigger. Trigger is a small device that releases a spring or a catch and normally sets off a mechanism. It's a cause. It causes an event or situation to happen or exist. That's a trigger. An emotional trigger, anything including memories, experiences, or events that sparks an intense emotional reaction regardless of your current mood. So your triggers, whether it's just a regular trigger or an emotional trigger, is going to affect your current mood. And it also said that emotional triggers are usually associated with post-traumatic stress, PTSD. Now, we don't want to go into that because that's a whole nother teaching I did do a while ago that I could bring back if needed. But, you know, triggers are a part of life. And we deal with triggers almost every day, all the time. Some triggers we have been able to deal with and move on because they're not as traumatic. They're not as emotional at the time. Some are very emotional. Some are, very present, and if we're not careful when we're dealing with fear and triggers, sometimes we look for the trigger. We can look for the triggers, versus going throughout your day, waking up and saying, this is the day that the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. And then we start looking for the triggers. It's kind of like we are expecting the triggers. I was that. You expect the triggers. We expect the fear. We expect these things to happen. And we have to renew our mind. We have to change our mind as it pertains to how we are dealing with these fears and these triggers, because that's not a healthy way of living. It's not living abundantly that, we're supposed to live. It's not a quality of life at all if you are living behind fear, if you are expecting fear, if you're looking for the triggers that trigger your fear. That's not healthy. And if you're doing that, you have got to get to a place to where, if you have to seek mentorship, counseling, therapy, or what have you, you owe it to yourself to be free in your mind. Because again, fear is false evidence appearing real. Large part of fear is a response to a painful experience in life, harmful events, and the unknown, which can lead to subconscious behaviors. So sometimes we're operating from a place of fear and we're not even aware that we're operating from this place, or it's just so normal that we just operate from this type of place because as our way of life. And that's not healthy. Who deserves that? Who deserves that? Again, a lot of us have acquired fear. A lot of us have acquired fear. We've bought into a fear, or we've bought into a false evidence appearing real. We've accepted it as our own. And think about it. What fear, what false evidence have you accepted as your own? You could almost call fear fake, because it's not true. Some fear is true, but we're not talking about we're talking about the kind that paralyzes us, the kind that keeps us from moving forward. You have to search yourself to find the fear that you're dealing with that keeps you from moving forward, keeps you from doing the things that you're supposed to do, keeps you from functioning properly. We're talking about that fear. If you don't have a fear in a certain area, then we're not talking about that, because you're not fearful in that area. But some of us have a fear of being alone, a fear of success. We have a fear of loss. I mean, we have all kind of fears. People have a fear of being criticized, a lot of things. And these things are paralyzing us and causing us to just stand still and not move. And if you're not moving forward, you're still moving backwards. You're not moving forward at all. Fear signals triggers which set off subconscious searches for escape routes. So in that fear, or how they say fear of flight, you leave. When you come fearful or you face with your fear, you leave or you decrease. That's an escape, an escape route. And we can't be healed or delivered from something that we don't address. There's no way. It's just going to continue, and it's going to continue and continue until we can address it, until we can face it and deal with it. It's not going to go anywhere, and it's going to just keep coming around. And the enemy don't care. The enemy's job is to steal, kill, and to destroy. And he does not care what you dealt with. He does not care why you have fear. He doesn't care that you have acquired fear from a parent and it passed on down to you as a child. He doesn't care about any of that. He doesn't care. His job is to steal, kill, and to destroy. So I thank God for platforms like this and any other platforms on Facebook or social media or wherever you can get a church, Bible study, or wherever that'll help you deal with your fear, because you deserve to live a free life. You deserve to be whole from the inside out, not dealing with fear. So I'm thankful for this platform to even be able to share this with you, because we all have areas of fear that we need to overcome. We do. And you're not alone. You are definitely not alone. Last week, I asked the question, what was the source of your fear? Like, what was the source of your fear? Like I said, some people said they didn't want to be criticized. Some had a fear of not being sure, like being asked a question and not having the answer. I talked to someone who said that they were fearful of letting their spouse down or being a disappointment. Wow. Some people had a fear of the unknown. People had fear of because they had a lack of confidence. Wow. Like, wow. Can you see what we're dealing with? And I'm sure there are so many other levels of fear or types of fear that we're dealing with, that I'm not going to negate that we have the fear, because it's there. For whatever reason, it's been embedded into our minds, where we have magnified it and made it bigger than what it really is. Whatever the reason, however fear has gained access to your heart and your mind, you still deserve to be free. You still deserve to be healed from it, to be whole. You don't deserve to operate from the guise of fear. That's not what God said. He said that he has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. So you owe it to yourself to be free of your fear. And again, if we don't address our fear, we're not going to be healed from it. We're not going to be able to overcome it. We're not, so find the source of your fear. A lot of times, finding the source or traveling through our life to find the source could be painful, because it takes you back to places of pain, places of uncertainty, just some horrible places that we may not want to go back to. But sometimes in order to go forward, we have to go back, and going back will sometimes propel you forward. So, you are not alone. You're not the only person that's dealing with the fear that you're dealing with. I guarantee you, it may make you feel alone. It may make you feel like nobody else is dealing with this but you. But I guarantee you are not the only one dealing with the fear that you're dealing with. We just have to support one another and share and encourage and motivate each other to overcome our fear, so we can be 100% effective in any area of influence that we're in. Whatever God has called you to do or be, you can be 100%. You can be on your way to wholeness, so you can perform or do the thing that God has called you to do, and yet you can walk worthy of the call of God on your life. Sometimes we've walked in fear long enough We've hidden behind fear long enough, and it's time out. It's time out. There are people assigned to your voice. There are people assigned to your hands. There are people that are waiting to hear what you have to say. There are people waiting to hear what you to feel what you have to do. They are a recipient of your gift. And if we are not um, using our gift because we're fearful, then we're hurting people, or we're not blessing people the way that we're supposed to. So you owe it to yourself, and you owe it to your God to overcome your fear. God can help you do anything you need to do because he's your helper. He's your creator. He is your creator, and it's not in his will for us to operate from behind fear. How our mind processes fear. Our mind will take our fear. Like we said, we acquired it sometimes in our life. Our mind will take our fear and turn it into a reality. It will magnify it and make it bigger than what it really is. And again, we're talking about the fear, the false evidence appearing real. That's what we're talking about. So if it's false and we've magnified it, we've just magnified something that's not even real because of our fear. How have you acquired your fear? How have you acquired it? Did you acquire your fear from a parent? Sometimes us as parents, we can interject our fears on our children because of something that we were afraid of, or something that we were ashamed of, or somewhere that we were hurt in the past that has caused us to be still or not move forward. We can put that fear onto our children. So our children have acquired the same fear that we have, and they haven't even lived life yet in that area to experience that pain or that fear. So what ways have we acquired fear? What ways have we passed that fear down to our children? I know when, we have 4 daughters, most of you know that, and they're all grown and, on their own now. But I remember when they were teenagers and starting to branch out and do things, and I would be so nervous about certain things that they would do that I would try to stop them or talk them out of it or give them all these pros and cons and stuff like that, because I was fearful. And the Lord came to me and told me to stop clipping their wings. Stop clipping their wings. They know right from wrong. You've told them the pros and the cons. It's their decision to go and do. You've prepared them. So now they have to go and have their life experiences. But I can't project my fears on them and clip their wings, because our kids are resilient. They're going to try some stuff. I learned a lot from my kids. In some areas, they're just fearless. And I have learned a lot from them in the area of being fearless, because we can't project our fears on our children. That is how a lot of us have even acquired some of the fears that we have. They've been passed down. So getting to the source of our fear, we have to get all the way down to the core of why we're fearing, why we have these triggers in this area of fear. Because if we don't get to the bottom of it, get to the source of the issue, we're not going to be able to heal from it. And again, you cannot heal or be delivered from something that you don't address. Hey, Pastor Cunningham, how are you, beautiful? We cannot heal or be delivered from something that we don't address. That's fear, insecurity, that's anything. And again, a lot of times we have to be careful that we're not harboring the fear. We're not protecting the fear. We have to let the fear go. And my goal with dealing with our fear tonight is to help you and us, me, and we realize that the areas that we are operating under fear. We have to realize those areas. And that's my goal in these broadcasts of dealing with fear, is to open up your mind, cause you to think about the source of your fear, what you do when you're triggered. How do you respond? How do you snap? Do you back up? Do you disappear? Do you just not do it anymore for fear of criticism or fear of failure or fear of, confidence? You're not walking worthy. Life is a part of ups and downs. Life is a part of failure. Life is a part of fear. You know, it has fears through life, period. But the Bible says that God says he has not given us the spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. So if you tell yourself and you understand that fear is not of God, we can build our confidence in knowing that it's a false evidence appearing real. And that's where we have to get. We have to get. Our mind also processes fear. I just said that our mind processes fear by turning it into a reality, by magnifying it and making it bigger than what it is. And then the fear, the mind process it after you magnify it and make it bigger than what it is. And now it becomes your action. It becomes how you operate. It becomes the basis of how you move. So now, because of this fear in a certain area, when we get to that area, we move from a place of fear. We move from a place of fear. And that's how our mind is processing it. And again, we have to renew our mind because, again, fear is false evidence appearing real. I keep saying that over and over because I want us to understand that this fear is not real. We have to overcome what we think this fear is. We have to overcome it because I don't know what your fear is or what it's stopping you from doing. Only you know that. So you have to take an honest assessment of what your fear is. When you become fearful and sit in it, like I said, allow your fear. I said this last week. Allow your fear to expose you. So what I mean by that is when you find yourself fearful, when you find yourself triggered in the area of your fear or fears, sit in, take a moment. Don't run, don't freeze. Well, you can freeze in this one, but not like paralyzed. But sit in it. Sit in it, look around in it, and see where it is. See where it's coming from. Allow yourself to feel it and process it so you can get to the bottom of where it's coming from and what it's not. I have done that. I do that. You have to sit, and we can't always run away from things or avoid things. Sometimes we have to sit in it, process it. If sometimes I sit in the middle of it and I talk to God right in the middle of it, and he will answer. He will answer. But if we run from it, we're running. We're avoiding. If we freeze and we don't address it, we're freezing so we won't be detected. And again, that's hiding from your fear. So you don't want to hide from it because you owe it to yourself. You owe it to your future. You owe it to your family, your community, your position, your area of influence. You owe it to yourself. You owe it to God to address your fear because, again, fear is not from God. He didn't give that to you. He didn't give that to you. So you're operating in something that's from the enemy. And it's designed to steal, kill, and to destroy you. It's designed to keep you in a place, a small place. It's designed to keep you out of abundant living. It's designed to keep you out of the will of God and away from your calling. And again, there are people waiting on your voice. There are people waiting on your hands. There are people waiting on your gift. And if we are frozen as to not be detected, if we're running away from our fear, how many of you know that the enemy, if you struggle with, the enemy does not fight you in an area that you don't struggle with. He doesn't fight you in the area of your weaknesses. Am I saying that right? He fights you where you're strong because he wants to break you down. He wants to break you down. So if the enemy is fighting you so big in a certain area, a lot of times that's where we're supposed to be. And the enemy's job, he's just not going to allow you to just go and just be. That's not how the enemy operates. He's just not going to allow you to just go and be great. How the saying says, go let me be great. The enemy is not going to allow you to just be great. That's not what he does. So if he's fighting you in an area, a certain area, look at that area. You're probably really anointed in that area. You're probably really gifted in that area. Like to say, the enemy wouldn't be fighting you so bad in this area if it wasn't where you're supposed to be. Think about that. So how have you magnified this false evidence that appears real? How have you made it appear real in your mind. We all have done that. We all have done that. So how our mind processes fear, we turn it into a reality to make it bigger than what it really is. And then it becomes our action of how we operate and the basis of how we move. And then it becomes the foundation of our actions in that particular area, which keeps you paralyzed and not moving forward at all. So I hope this is registering, is hitting you somewhere, because we deserve more. We're worth more than living behind fear. False evidence appearing real is what you feel when there is no fear. Oof, that's weird. False evidence appearing real is what you feel when there is no fear. That don't make sense. But that's what we do. There's no fear. So what are we magnifying? Like, why are we magnifying this fear? Again, that takes us back to the journey of finding the source. That makes us go back to figure out why am I scared of this in the first place? And then, have you ever been afraid to do something, to operate behind fear, but you can't back up because it's showtime, and you get up there, and once you do your thing or whatever it is, afterwards be like, that wasn't even hard. That wasn't even that bad. So then you're able to, so then you may not deal with that the next time. So sometimes the overcoming comes after you've pressed. Like Lynn said earlier, we have to press on. Sometimes the overcoming of the fear happens after we've pressed on through it. It's not as bad. Sometimes we're bracing, for that expected end, or we're bracing for that expected result of the fear. And once we get through it, you're like, oh, wasn't that bad? Wasn't that bad? So we have to press on anyway. We have to press on anyway. Fear is an illusion that is fabricated in our minds. It's an illusion. Again, we're not talking about fear of harm, where there is a natural fear of something dangerous. We're not talking about that, because fear can be a savior as well. But we're talking about the fear that is false evidence appearing real. I also made the statement last week about allowing our fear to expose us. The definition of the word expose means to make something visible by uncovering it, to reveal the true nature of something. So when I say, when you're triggered by your fear, you find yourself in your fear, take a moment, sit in it. Sit in it to process it, so you can make it visible. You can uncover it. If you sit in it and allow it to take place, you uncover it. You uncover it. And this is where you can reveal the true nature of what your fear is. Difficult, but I've done it and it works. You may have to do it over and over, depending on what your fear is, but try it. It's not as bad as you think. Again, the fear is false evidence appearing real. So we're sitting in something that's not real, but because it is our fear, we have to allow ourselves, we have to allow it to expose us. So when you find yourself in that fearful place or triggered by a fear, take a moment and sit in it, so you can uncover it, so you can reveal the true nature of it. And that way you can begin to overcome your fear. Uncovering and revealing our fear is the first step in overcoming our fear and unraveling the lie behind the fear. This will help you get to the source of why you're fearful. The more our fear consumes us, the more it controls us. So let me ask you this: how are you controlled by your fear? Wherever your fear is, wherever you have that fear of whatever, how is it controlling you? How has it controlled you? How long has it controlled you? Mine controlled me for a long time, and I'm still working on it, because it's a work in progress. It doesn't just happen overnight. You know, it's a process. And some of us, our process may be a little more frequent, and then some may come around once in a while. But however the frequency of our fear is, when it comes and you recognize it, deal with it. Deal with it. If you're at the place to where you can deal with it, sit in it, process it, so you can get to the source of it, so you can become free in your actions, free in your mind. You can just be whole from the inside out. Fear knows Fear places us out of our place of authority and quenches our gift. And without realizing it, we submit to it. I said that last week. So when you don't realize your fear, and when you operate under your fear, you're submitting to it. We're submitting to it. And I also said last week, and this was like, ooh, a fearful person honors what they fear more than God. And I know if you're like me, you don't want to put anything before God. You don't, God said he'll have no other gods before him, but you don't want to honor anything before you honor God. You don't want to honor anything over God. Well, think about the thing that God has called you to be, called you to do, called you to operate under, and you're operating in that area under fear. So are you walking worthy of the call that God has placed on your life by operating under fear? And if you are, if God said he has not given us a spirit of fear, then if you're not doing what he's called you to do, then you're operating under fear, which you are serving that and honoring that fear over what God has called you to do. And again, I'm not negating the things that we face in life, the painful experiences in life that has caused our fear. I'm just encouraging us all, us, not you, us, to address our fear, overcome our fear, so we can be all that God has called us to be and walk worthy of our calling, walk worthy of who God says we are. He says we are above and not beneath. We are the head and not the tail. Fear is having us operating as the tail. Fear has us operating beneath. And he said it. That's not who we are. That's not where we're supposed to operate from. God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. We serve what we fear, making us slaves to our fear. Are you a slave to your fear? Are we going to stop being slaves to our fear? Yes, because that was deep. When I said that last week, that hit me hard because I have been a slave to my fear. False evidence appearing real. And again, I'll say it. Sometimes the false evidence is real. Sometimes it is people criticizing you, talking about you, things like that. But we can't allow that to stop us. We have to press on anyway. We can't allow that to stop because people are going to talk. People are not going to support. People are going to say what they're going to say. They're going to do what they're going to do. But that can't control what you do. That can't control who you are. That can't control the gift that God has given you because they didn't give it to you. And it's not defined by them. Your gift is not defined by people, places, or things. Your gift is not defined by the approval of man or the validation of man. That's not what your gift or your calling is approved by. So the fear of that does not have anything to do with what God has called you to do. You still have to go forth because God is going to equip you because he's called you. So you're equipped. So he's given you everything you need to do to perform the thing that he's given you to perform, or be who he's called you to be, or do what he's called you to do, or go where he's called you to go. He's equipped you to do that. So we have to look to God and we have to put on our armor because of those things and understand whose we are. If God is for us, who can be against us? If God is for us, who can stop us? Because if it's meant for you, it's going to be for you. Said the weapon may form, but it won't prosper. So we have to continue to go and not always run because the weapon has formed, or because the weapon of fear has formed, or because the weapon of naysayers or whatever has formed. We have to continue to go because if God called you to it, he'll take you through it. So we have to put on our big girl drawers and our boots and tie up our boots and get in this thing for the long haul because we have work to do. Now, 3 steps that will help you overcome your fear. Like I said earlier, we have to notice our thoughts. Often our thoughts wander, and we allow them to wander, making us feel afraid, uneasy, unsafe, overwhelmed. And then we adapt, or we welcome fear with open arms. We have to stop welcoming the fear. We have to stop embracing the fear. We have to stop acquiring the fear. Instead of embracing and allowing our fear and thoughts and to wander and take root, notice what you're thinking and how it makes you feel so you can address it and stop the emotions. I'm going to say that again. Instead of embracing or inquiring or welcoming or adapting to our fear and allowing our thoughts to wander, W-A-N-D-E-R, and take root into our lives to produce a stronghold that holds us still, that paralyzes us, we need to notice what we're thinking and how it makes us feel so we can address it and stop the emotion. That's one of the ways we can overcome our fear. 2, take a deep breath. Like I said, sit in it, sense the moment. Sit in it. Don't run away from it. When you feel fear taking over or you feel those triggers coming on, examine your thoughts, examine your surroundings so you can get to the source of what's going on. Again, recognize your fear as a false evidence appearing real, trying to shackle you, trying to paralyze you. Look at it as the enemy trying to keep you away from doing what it is you're supposed to do, whatever it is. Whatever it is, it doesn't always have to be in church. It could be at work. It could be advancing your career. It could be jumping out on faith and buying a new car, a new home, or whatever it could be. Whatever that fear is that's paralyzing you, address it. Get to the source. Examine why you're feeling that fear so you can get to the source of the fear. And then be strong enough to let the fear go. Be strong enough. You realize that your fear is false evidence appearing real. And it's evoked by negative thoughts. So we know that by now. So we have to say, when you're dealing with the fear, this is what I do. I sit in it and I recognize, because you know what you're feeling. You know when that trigger hits. You know when your thoughts and your insides have shifted. Other people around you may not know, but you know. And that's when you sit in that, take an honest assessment and examine your thought and release those negative thoughts. Because again, if it's dealing with fear, it's a false evidence appearing real. And that's how we have to look at fear. We have to call it what it is. It's false. It's not real. Is this something that I have adapted? Is this something that I hide behind? And then you have to face it. Like, don't run from it. Don't just allow it to take your thoughts and wander and just go all off. Face it, deal with it, and put it where it needs to be, which is under your feet. Under your feet, because it's false evidence appearing real. And in closing, and if you all have any comments, anybody want to come on to say any comments, just request to come on and I will accept, and you can appear. Don't be scared. Come on and make some comments and say some things. Some of the steps that we talked about last week in overcoming fear, to go along with the 3 that I just mentioned, was 1, and this was all under allowing your fear to expose you, is admit your fear, acknowledge it, and tell the truth about it. Own your fear. It's your fear. It's not anybody else's. It's yours. So own your fear so you can address it and tell the truth about it. Express your fear. Sometimes you might have to let it out, speak it, write it. I'm big on journaling. Write. Do whatever you feel that's necessary for you to express it, but you got to get it out. Shoot, call me. We can talk about it. I'm gonna let you get it out. I'm gonna have you laughing, and at the end of it, you're gonna be free from it. Let it go. A lot of times it's easier said than done, but this is a process, but it's doable. And visualize the outcome you desire. Think about it, speak it, write it down, journal it, vision yourself free from your fear, and then take action. Even though it's nerve-wracking sometimes, even though it's painful, you may do it in fear and trembling. You may be crying when you do it, but take action. Psalms 118 says, the Lord is with me. I will not be afraid. That's Psalms 118, verse 6. The Lord is with me. I will not be afraid. Philippians 3:13-14 says, forget what is behind you and press toward your goal, the mark that God has called you to. Whew, God is for us, y'all. God is for us. God is for us. Psalms 34:4 says, I sought the Lord and he answered me. He delivered me from all my fears. Y'all need to write that one down. That's Psalms 34:4. You have to confess that every day. Confess it every day. Psalms 34:4. I sought the Lord and he answered me and he delivered me from all my fears. Help cometh from the Lord, y'all. He's right here. He's telling us. So look at the scripture. The scripture is even helping us with the fear because God knows. He knew, y'all. He knows. Psalms 27:1. The Lord is the light of my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the light of my salvation. Whom shall I fear? I don't know about y'all. If y'all like scripture the way I do, look at this. Psalms 27:1. The Lord is the light of my salvation. Whom shall I fear? And 2 Timothy 1:7. God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. There you have it. It's in the word. Fear is not of God. Fear is not of God. It is not of God. So you deserve to live a life free of fear. So I encourage you as I close that you assess the source of your fear. Again, when you have those moments where you feel paralyzed and you know God is telling you to do something and you know that you're supposed to be going somewhere or doing what have you, or speaking, singing, ministering, whatever it is, applying for that job, applying for that car, applying for that house, advancing that career, whatever it may be. If you know that's what you're supposed to be doing, when you step toward that thing and you begin to get that fear trigger, sit in it and ask yourself, okay, why am I feeling like this? So you can get to the bottom of your fear. If you have to call me and we can walk through that thing together, I've done this. I have done this. Call me. Most of you have my number. Inbox me. We can walk through that thing together. I can give you some tools on how to walk through that thing, because I believe in dealing with what you feel from the inside out. We can look beautiful on the outside. We can look beautiful, like we have it all together, but sometimes we are tore from the floor from the inside. Sometimes we need a lot of help from the inside out. And it's just a matter of time that our insides are going to catch up with our outsides, or our outside going to catch up with our inside. So you owe it to yourself to be free from the inside out. You owe it to yourself to deal with what you feel from the inside out. You owe it to yourself. God desires that you prosper and be in good health, even as your soul prosper. He died, he gave his only begotten son that we might have life and life more abundantly. Well, if we're living behind fear, we're not living an abundant life. We're living a restricted life. We're living a life of limits, and we deserve to live limitless because God died on the cross. He gave his only begotten son for us to be free. And living in fear is bondage. Living in fear is a stronghold holding you small, keeping you out of the will of God, keeping you from walking worthy of the call of God, keeping you from doing the thing that you're supposed to do. And you don't deserve that. I said it. You don't deserve that. I don't care what you've done in the past or who you were with and who you did it with and whatever. You don't deserve it. You don't deserve it, because you can be delivered from your fear. Especially if you belong to Christ. Especially if you belong to Christ. You're a new creature. Old things are passed away. All things are new. So we have to, just like sometimes when people lose weight, they're still heavy or overweight in their mind. So a lot of times, like the Bible tells us, we have to renew our mind. God help us to renew our mind. So when you're a new creature, you have to adapt the mind of a new creature. God said, I will bless you beyond your wildest imaginations. So give it to him. Cast your fear on God, because he cares for you. And he said he will perfect the things that concern you. So cast your fear on him. Cast it on him. He's your maker. He knows what you have. He knows what you have need of. because he said he has not given us the spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. And you deserve to walk in power, love, with a sound mind. So I pray that I said something tonight, again this week, as we deal with fear together, that you can take along your way, um, add some tools to your toolbox of life and apply them. Again, seek God for your healing, seek God for your deliverance from fear. It's doable. We all deal with it. You are not alone, but you do deserve to live free in your mind. You do deserve to live a life whole, because you're worthy. You're worthy of it. Power, love, and a sound mind. You are worthy of it. So I thank you all for joining PC Ministries again tonight. I pray that I said something that helps you along the way that you can take. If you have any questions, concerns, comments, or any topic suggestions, please put them in the comments. I welcome them all. I'm looking for guests to come on to talk on different subjects and topics, all of that. So pray for me as I pray for you. We're going to overcome this spirit of fear together. Y'all pray for me as I continue PC Ministries. Thank you all for the encouragement and the motivation. Thank you for spending part of your Wednesday night with PC Ministries. Again, I will see you all next Wednesday. Have a wonderful week. Bye.